Hello everybody, happy Monday. I hope all of you had a wonderful, wonderful weekend. So today's video is another full day of meals, but I did take a poll and mostly you guys wanted to see just budget-friendly meals and vintage meals. So today is a mix. Some are from the 1950s, and I'll tell you that at the end of the video, which things were from the 1950s cookbook, and some are just the way I've always made it. So it's just a mix of the two, but all budget friendly. And just to point out, most of the vintage stuff, because of cooking from scratch and all of that, you guys, is budget friendly. So I am going to continue to use those recipes. I love my 50s cookbook. I love these recipes. Most of them taste really, really good. Now, I did not share with you the lunch recipes that we made for the 50s lunch because you got to be honest, we were not big on them. They were not that great to us, and if they're not that great, I really don't want to share them. But that is one of the few things that we have not liked that I've made from that cookbook so far. And Thursday, we're going to do Throwback Thursdays, and that's going to be all vintage. So if you're not wanting vintage, then Thursday is probably not for you. And if you are wanting vintage, then it is for you. But just remember, it's all budget friendly. And as far as Mondays, I decided to do Mondays versus Tuesdays. That kind of just spreads it out a little bit more. And Mondays are just going to be a full day of meals. I'll record it on Sunday like I did this one, so it'll be a full day of our Sunday meals. That way everybody's home, and I just have the freedom to cook a good full day of meals for you. So let's go on and jump into this video. Here is Sunday's full day meals for our large family of 9. So we're going to go on and start off with our breakfast. We're going to make some biscuits. So here I am doing the flour first, 3 cups of flour. And then the baking powder. And for that I am doing 4.5 teaspoons. Then 3/4 teaspoon of salt. And then I'm going to sift that all together. Then you're going to add your shortening or your lard. I did lard, but shortening works too. And I'm doing 6 tablespoons. And cut that in until it is small crumbles. Then make a little hole in the center of your flour to add your milk. And I'm doing 1 cup of milk. And you're going to stir that until combined. And then flour your surface. Knead your dough a couple times. My dough is a little bit sticky, so I added a little bit more flour on the top. You don't want it to be a real stiff dough, but you need to be able to work with it. But try not to overwork your dough or your biscuits will be tough. So then just roll it out. And then with some softened butter, you're going to spread a layer of that on top of the dough. And then I fold it in 4 folds. And then roll that out again. And again, put another layer of the softened butter. Fold it over, and then you're going to cut. I just rolled it just a little just to make it stick together. I am not using my grandmother's cutter this time because I wanted my biscuits a little bit bigger so that they would make good sized breakfast sandwiches with what was left over. And then I bake these at 350 degrees for about 15 minutes or until they are nice and golden on top. Now while those are cooking, I'm going to go on and make the bread dough for tonight. So I'm going to put in some warm water. That is 1/4 cup of warm water, and then 1 packet of dry active yeast, or 2.5 teaspoons if you have the bulk yeast. Stir that and let it sit to get nice and bubbly. While that is getting bubbly, in a saucepan we're going to heat 1 cup of milk with 2 tablespoons of shortening, 2 tablespoons of sugar, a teaspoon of salt, and we're going to let that come to almost a boil. We are going to scald the milk. And then we're going to let that sit till it gets to room temperature. I find that putting it in a separate cup like this works best and helps it get to room temperature faster. And now the biscuits are coming out of the oven, and I'm putting in the next batch of biscuits. And I like to brush them with some melted butter as soon as they come out of the oven. And back to our bread. It's nice and bubbly now, so we're going to add our room temperature milk mixture. Stir that. And then we're going to add our beaten egg and 3.5 cups of flour. And then we're going to let that mix until it pulls away from the sides of the bowl. And then put a small coating of olive oil on top of it to keep it from sticking. Cover and let that rise for a couple of hours until it is double in size. And now I put the sausage in the oven, and when it came out, I just drained some of the grease, and we're going to make a gravy. So I'm just adding some flour. This I do not measure. This is just the way my grandmother always made it, so I just kind of do it the same. A little salt and pepper. Stir that together, and it makes almost like a paste. But you still want to cook that paste for just a little bit so that your gravy doesn't taste like flour. And then you're going to slowly add milk. And I just keep adding milk until it is the right consistency. And it thickens more as it sits. My grandmother would always make this with bacon grease also. Okay, so let's back out a little bit. All right, here is our Sunday morning breakfast. We have our eggs and cheese. This is a dozen eggs, and I like to just whip it up with some half and half, salt and pepper, and then spray my pan down and dump it all in my pan. And right before I pull it out, I melt cheese on top. That way I can just cut it perfect to fit the biscuits, and it's also perfect for freezing that way. We're having some berries, sausage gravy, sausage, and then our beautiful biscuits. You guys really need to try this recipe. They are so incredible. So easy to make, so tasty. That's it. Now we're going to move on to preparing our dessert for tonight. So I'm going to add 2½ cups of flour with 1 teaspoon of baking soda, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, and you're going to sift that together 3 times. And then we're going to set that aside. And then I have this unsweetened chocolate. You need 4 ounces of it. So that is 1 whole bar if you have a bar like this. And I just melted mine in the microwave, but you could melt it over the stove, however you prefer. And set that aside. Take 1 cup of shortening and beat it until it is smooth. And then slowly you're going to add 2 cups of sugar. I am using a 1/2 cup just so that I can make sure that I'm only putting in a smaller amount at a time. Then you're going to add your 2 teaspoons of vanilla, your melted chocolate, and then you're going to add your eggs one at a time. I'm scraping down the sides though, just to make sure that all the chocolate gets through it and there's not just a bunch stuck on the sides. And then let it get good and mixed in between each egg. You also need sour milk or buttermilk. If you don't have buttermilk, all you have to do is add 1 to 2 tablespoons of vinegar to your milk. Let it sit for a few minutes and it will sour the milk. So here, all I'm doing is alternating between a cup of sour milk or buttermilk and the flour mixture that we had sifted. And then I'm adding 1 cup of chopped walnuts. And then you can put this into a or 2 9-inch round pans, or like I am, you can make cupcakes. And these bake at 350 degrees. It took probably about 15 minutes for the cupcakes. And it takes about 30 minutes if you are doing cakes, 9-inch round cakes. All right, and now it's time for lunch. So I got this French bread. You could definitely make your own, but I got this for 50 cents a loaf on a clearance at Walmart. And then the sauce is just my homegrown tomato sauce. And then I just add a little bit of Italian seasoning and a little bit of sugar to it. I am putting some on 3 pieces of the bread. 1 I am leaving without the red sauce. And then from my garden, I have tomatoes. I have the peppers. So 2 of them are going to be a vegetable pizza. I also have some onion I'm putting on. And there's the spinach. And then I have some basil from my garden, and I'm just sprinkling that on all 4 of the breads. And now sprinkle a little cheese on top. I'm doing that on 3 of them. And then I had a couple pieces of bacon. So half of that pizza will be a meat pizza and the other half will just be cheese. And I'm adding some pepperoni. And then the one on the end is going to be more just of kind of a baked sandwich. So it has the fresh basil on the bottom, and now I'm putting some American cheese and then some diced ham. And pepperoni. All right, here they are, all done. The vegetable, the meat without sauce, and the other one part cheese, part sauce. And now it's time to punch down the bread dough, and then we're going to shape it into rolls. Cover it and let that rise until double in size. And then these get baked at 350 degrees. They took probably about 20 minutes. And I almost forgot. Top it with a little bit of melted, it says to use melted fat, so I use lard, but you could definitely do butter or shortening instead. And now we need to make our icing. So this is 1 stick of butter, and then about a half a cup of shortening. I've been making it this way for 20 years, so I do not measure anything. I just eyeball it all. Cream that together. Add a little bit of salt. Some almond extract and vanilla extract. and then a pound of powdered sugar, and then add a little milk. Just a little. I'd add it by tablespoons until you can get the consistency you want. Now it's time to ice the cupcakes. So I have a disposable bag here and it started breaking on me. So I was getting icing everywhere, but I didn't want to waste it, so I used it anyway. And one went missing for the baby. And then I topped them just for fun with some chocolate jimmies. And now for the chicken. I'm just squirting on some mustard and some mayonnaise. And mix that all up and rub it all over the chicken. Trust me, you do not taste mustard or mayonnaise, and it makes a super crispy, wonderful chicken. And then I have some herbs from my garden. I have some basil and rosemary and parsley. And I'm going to stuff the inside of the bird with that. Then I like to add some red wine. This roasting pan is actually from my grandmother, one that she used for many, many years. Chopping up one onion, some carrots and celery. This is a lemon and thyme salt. Then a little minced garlic. And a little bit of chicken bouillon paste. And then I'm going to cover this and I'm going to bake it for about a half hour to 45 minutes, and then uncover for another 15 minutes to let the skin get nice and golden and crispy. All right, so here is dinner. There is some mashed potatoes and gravy. My gravy boat is missing somehow, but that's all right. Green beans, the rolls we made, and here is the chicken. And then for dessert, we are having the cupcakes. Okay, I hope you guys enjoyed that. So the recipes that I took from the 50s were the biscuits, and I'm getting better and better at those. It didn't say to roll them out as much and fold them over, but that gives that layers in between, and they are just really, really good. I definitely suggest making those highly. All of the things I made really today are fabulous. And then dinner, the rolls, the dinner rolls, and the cake mix were both from my 50s cookbook, and loved all of them. And everything else was either like the gravy, my grandmother has made it that way since as long as I can remember, so who knows how old that is. She does it with bacon grease or sausage grease. And the chicken I've made for 20 years, the icing I've made for 20 years. That's just how I've always made it. They're wonderful, I promise. All right, I hope all of you enjoyed this, and I'll see all of you Thursday. Thank you so much for watching. And if you haven't subscribed already, make sure you subscribe and click the little bell so that you don't miss any future videos. Bye, everybody.